Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At Turnkey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, Turnkey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. Turnkey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Here's what you can look forward to on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
Yeah, so we got to a point where a couple of things. The branding itself didn't make sense. I could internally tell the brand was not speaking enough, right? I could feel it was just another product on the shelf. From an operations standpoint, it was a very rough intro to big retail operations, and I didn't know what I was doing, so a ton of mistakes were made there. We couldn't fundraise because I didn't know how to fundraise at the time. It's an art essentially, and our co-manufacturing partner was not equipped at this scale, so it was like all these things were not fit for that kind of growth. So I was like, well, I need to hit the reset button. So we actually ended up shutting down for 4 to 5 months, and we restructured our whole operations department, our co-packer relationship. I raised some capital now because I got better at it. And then we ended up relaunching with a more purposeful brand. And at this point, I'm like, I feel like a third-time founder. I got all this knowledge now. So it felt better during the launch.
The Nice Guys on Business podcast. 100% gluten-free, and now with fewer calories. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
Okay, Nice Guy community. Today, we've got a guest who blends pure comfort with purpose. Our guest name is Myles Powell. He's the creative force behind Myles Comfort Foods. Back in 2015, Myles, fresh from studying civil engineering, launched a fruit-based barbecue sauce rooted in a family recipe. But the real magic happened when he actually paired it with a high-quality protein and whole food ingredients to create what people now call the mac and cheese with Moxie. I like it. His mission, to bring nostalgia to your freezer meals and clean ingredients that taste like home, dishes your grandparents would approve on, and Myles Comfort Food is off and running. It all started with love for food, and that gave him comfort as a kid, and it still drives him today. Myles, I'm excited to chat. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Thanks, Doug. I'm excited to be here.
So Myles Comfort Food. So comfortable in macaroni and cheese. That's what attracted me. First of all, the visual when I went to your website, by the way, Nice Guy Community, you'll head over to his website right in there in the show notes so that you can see it also. The visual on this food is just ridiculously attractive to me. Is that a common response that you get when people go to your website?
Oh, for sure, right? And it replicates the real thing. I mean, there's nothing better than seeing melted cheese on a plate, right? It's something about it.
I love it. Well, the melting cheese on a plate might have come with maybe some melting breaking points along your way in this entrepreneurial journey. Now, you don't necessarily put civil engineer along with mac and cheese motivated business owner. So how did that connection or that collision even happen to begin with?
Yeah, no, this is an exciting road to talk about. So growing up, obviously, the food was such an important part of my lifestyle. It was the family connector. It kept us all together. I mean, from the very small moment to the big family gatherings, I mean, food was always the centerpiece. But I ended up going to school for civil engineering because I was good at math. And so the natural thing was like, go get an engineering degree to get a good career. And I spent 4 years in college just getting my butt whooped. And I graduated. I remember feeling like, okay, this feels good. I'm ready to go out into the world and make some money, like be an adult, live on my own. But man, my second day of my first full-time job, I'm like, I hate this. It's like, I don't like engineering. And I realized it wasn't engineering as a discipline that I liked. It was the challenge that came along with it. And I had this entrepreneurship spirit deep inside me. And when I thought about what I wanted to do in life, food just became like the next step that made the most sense.
Well, what I love about that part of your journey, because, very typical of many entrepreneurs, we do what we love to do. The passion is really, it's not let me go out and find a job or let me go out and just start a business. It's if you start a business with some intention and you start a business with passion, it helps you get through a lot of those faltering moments, or those moments that you think, am I an imposter in this role? Is this not the role for me? Should I be playing something else? And you experienced that pretty early on when you had a part of your life or a part of your business that didn't succeed. So can we talk about the steps or missteps in that beginning early phase of you becoming an entrepreneur from an engineer?
I always tell folks there is a responsibility and freedom. It's a big responsibility. So when I was doing the business, it was part-time at first. I was still a full-time engineer, but I was building this business on the side. And once I finally got to a point where I was frustrated and I didn't like the engineering, any more than the first time I tried it, I was, you know what? I'm going to take a leap of faith. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to plunge head first into this entrepreneurship thing. And let me tell you, I was not ready. Like, the business wasn't ready. I personally wasn't responsible enough to handle that kind of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I ended up picking up 3 part-time jobs. One was an overnight gig, to the point where I'm like, this is kind of dumb. I should probably just go back to full-time work because I could be more efficient. And so it was like a reverse. Like, I tried it, dipped my toes in the water, didn't work out. Went back to full-time work, kept building the business, and ended up years later doing it all over again.
All right, so let's go back to that misstep for just a second. What were some of the things that you didn't realize as an entrepreneur and someone that was now working 3 part-time jobs and your full-time entrepreneurial gig, or even if it was a side hustle, it was still felt like it was full-time mind work that you were doing. Talk about some of those things that you didn't anticipate that you were experiencing as a brand new entrepreneur.
I think I was very naive to how to grow a food brand. Like, I thought, okay, I would do a couple of phone calls, a couple of emails, and all these stores would be like, "Oh yeah, come on board. We want your product." And I didn't even think about promoting the product. It was so much of what I thought was the glamour of, like, oh, social media calendar, and, like, going to networking events, and that stuff is needed. But it's, when you're starting out, you got to sell. Like, the end of the day, if you're not selling, you're not going to go anywhere.
Nothing happens until you sell something, right?
Exactly. And I that was a huge misstep. And then also, like, when you're given that schedule freedom for the first time, you kind of take advantage of it, but sometimes the wrong way. Like, I was so excited that I could walk to a coffee shop on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. and do work, but it wasn't strategic. It was like, oh, I can wake up at 9, and it was like, let me just enjoy my freedom instead of, well, I need to, like, put the pedal to the metal now.
A lot of times the early stage entrepreneurs, they are so focused on the dream, meaning the thing that they really love the most, that they don't take a moment to focus on the other stuff, the systems, the process, the documentation, the staffing, the personnel, the assistants, food ingredients, marketing, selling, all of that stuff. Was it the food that was your passion, or was it something? I know the dream was your passion, but what was it that drove you? Did it matter what you were selling or doing, or did it need to be in the food business?
It had to be food. It was food as a vessel. It was food as a way of sharing the emotion and getting people to enjoy the food with me. So I was doing, things like farmers markets and various events. It's just that there was no, CPG as an industry is very tough. And I didn't know the steps it takes to scale a brand. So I was literally winging it. And because of that, it's just things I didn't do that I should have done. And then I eventually went broke. And it was like, hey,
don't mean to laugh at you. No, don't mean to laugh.
No, listen, I had those moments. I'm like, I need more money or I'm not going to survive. And that's when it came to, like, I got to go back to full-time work.
All right. So talk about that first day back to a full-time job, and then how did you keep the dream alive as it relates to your entrepreneurial spirit?
It was a bit of relief because because listen, being financially stable is pretty important. So there was a relief for sure. But I think I believed in it so much that I'm like, okay, I learned a lot from that period of full-time work. And because I kept going and kept going, I was still learning. And as I was even doing the full-time work, I would use those off hours to keep learning, right? And I was still making progress. So it wasn't like the dream took a back seat. I just was forcing myself to use my time more efficiently because I didn't have as much time anymore, which was a blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're constrained to 5 hours a day as opposed to 16. I'm going to get what I need to get done in 5 hours a day.
Right, right. Okay, so you went back to work full time. You kept the dream alive. You started doing. Was it the same business, or when did you make the pivot from the barbecue sauce idea to the mac and cheese with Moxie
So
idea?
yeah, so that happened during actually, it's funny, that happened during the full-time round one period. What happened was I was at a farmer's market a lot of times, and I would be setting up shop. And if you know anything about that landscape,
Hmm.
it's a lot of work,
Yeah.
where you're setting up on a Wednesday at 6 a.m., rain, sleet, hail, or snow, hot or cold. And it's a lot of work. And if you're doing it by yourself, you get very tired.
Hmm.
And I would be so sick of setting up on a Tuesday morning, my little stand of barbecue sauce. And I'm like, no one's buying barbecue sauce at 9 in the morning. I'd have to wait till like 11. And I'd watch all the people
Right.
buy like ready to eat foods and things they could eat on site or take home. And I'm like, I should make something that people can eat here or heat
Uh-huh.
up in the microwave.
Right.
And so I was, you know what? I make a great mac and cheese, a buffalo mac and cheese with chicken. I'm going to do that to showcase my buffalo sauce. And as soon as I started doing that, people were like, hey, that mac and cheese, I need more of that.
Uh-huh.
And then I introduced that to the grocery stores that were carrying my sauces and it outsold it like 10 to 1. So then it was like light bulb. I should probably make that the feature of the brand, not just an offset of a product.
All right, we skipped a little bit in there. We forgot to talk, or maybe I forgot to ask you the question about how did you get that first grocery store to say yes? Because you did have to sell something there. So I want to be realistic with our community. It wasn't that Miles just woke up one day and he was in 650 stores. It was he was hustling early on to get in that first store. So talk about that struggle.
Yeah. So the very, very first store, it was a mom and pop, one location. And here comes Mr. Naive Miles with a case of barbecue sauce and says, hey, I do this thing. Can you try it and sample it and sell it? And they said, well, this is what we'll do. You can set up a little demo.
Hmm.
We'll see how it does. And if it does really well, we'll bring it in. And so they had it was almost like a little mini kitchen where I could actually cook chicken and then serve. It was kind of cool concept.
Yeah.
So they saw that people liked it a lot. And so they said, okay, we'll buy a case off you. Now, you're talking what at the time, $20, but it was like a first time being on a retail shelf. I didn't even know what wholesale meant
Right.
to the point where in my brain, I went, okay, I think the sauce should cost $8. I'm going to sell it to you for $7 and thinking they would just put $8 on the shelf. But little did I know there's a whole giant markup.
Right.
And it went on the shelf for like $12. And I went, okay, lesson number one. I got to figure out how to do this part too, the whole financial piece. So, but I did that store after store after store, one by one. I mean, it took me 4 years to get into like an actual chain of a retailer.
Slow and steady wins the race. I think you just proved that as case in point here. You learned, I guess, the entrepreneurial attitude. My attitude has always been, and I've owned a company of some sort for the last 35 or almost 40 years of doing it. It's slow and steady wins the race, and you gotta build this plane as you're flying it. It's no, well, let me build the plane and then have everybody jump on board. It is trying to figure it out as you go because we all want to blaze our own path. The biggest challenge is that sometimes we don't even know what path we need to put our feet on to begin with. So, how did you know? Okay, I need to back up a little bit because if I'm going to sell it to them for $7, they're going to sell it for $12. It's not like they're going to sell it for $8 and everybody will be happy, including the client. So the customer. So how did you figure that kind of stuff out? Trial and error?
Oh yeah, 100% trial and error, right? So I'm a numbers guy, fortunately, and so I went right to my spreadsheet and I was like, okay, let me look at my cost of goods sold and all these other factors and like And I didn't even understand what a proper margin is at the time. I was just like, as long as I'm making something, it's better than nothing. And so I
Right.
figured
Right.
out what I need to sell it to store X for them to put it on the shelf at price Y.
Right.
And it's funny because that's a small segment of the market, the mom and pop, and that works well. That's prior to working with distribution and big retailers. And that was like a whole nother level that I, once again, bum rushed into and then got hit on the head where like, now you're working with the distribution channel that goes, okay, we're going to put 10% on top of this and sell it to the retailer. And they're going to mark it up 35%. Oh, but don't forget, you have to pay for freight. And it was just like, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I expected.
So all of this struggle, you figured it out as you went along. There are so many people that give up at that point because maybe they think, well, I'll never be able to sell this at a profit, or I'm making such a little profit that it doesn't, even if I move 1,000 of these cases, I'm making, $1,000, and that can't pay my mortgage payment at the end of the month. So how did you know when to bob and when to weave or zig and
It,
zag?
yeah, I think it was always the plan to scale by volume to the point where it's making substantial money. And then I'm thinking, oh, well, the economies of scale will kick in. So my cost per unit will go down as I make more, which is false in some cases. But that was my vision. And I think the thing that pushed me forward was the incremental increases in purchase orders. Like I remember the first time I got a 4-figure purchase order and I was like, hot dog, this is awesome.
Right.
Then years later, it was a 5-figure and I was like, oh, this is crazy. It's just that with that additional incremental magnitude of purchase order came another magnitude of expenses and fees. And that's what makes this so hard. It's like the more you grow, the more expensive it gets.
So, as entrepreneurs, we tend to see the opportunity in every problem. The realist sees the problem in every opportunity. It seems like
Yeah,
there was some problems that were created because you grew at a point where you didn't think about, well, what happens when I get, in order for $20,000 or $10,000 in barbecue sauce or mac and cheese, I have to have a kitchen that can scale it. I have to have a distribution source. I have to have my profit margin all, there's tons of stuff that, labor just for one thing is incredible. That's probably one of your biggest expenses outside of food costs.
exactly. Yeah, and finding good labor is not easy. And as I was scaling up at this point, I was still working my engineering job, and that's what made it even harder. Where it got to a point where I had to manage the company while wearing a different hat. And it was tearing me apart, right? It was like I had a breaking point though, and I would love to tell you what happened. So,
Yeah.
I'll never forget this day. We were fulfilling our biggest order, and I had hired a group of guys to work the kitchen while I was gone, which is hard enough because you're not there to monitor what's
Right.
happening.
Right.
But I was working 45 minutes away from the kitchen and it was doing construction. I get a call from the kitchen themselves and like, hey, the freezer went down.
Mm.
So basically, like your product will spoil. And at the same time, there's a delivery truck that's going to pick up his order and they're on their way now. And I was like, oh my Lord. And the elevator was broke, the freight elevator. So I got my car, sped to the kitchen, and I told my team, all hands on deck. We've got to depalletize, remove each case, and walk down each case to outside, repalletize it, and get it on the truck.
Right.
And I remember after that being like, this ain't gonna work. Like these things are gonna happen. I have to be here.
This is not scalable. It's
not at all. And the stress was out of control, right? And so that was one of the cases where I knew if I'm going to grow beyond this, I got to go back to doing this full time.
I remember somewhere probably in the mid 90s. Now I was a bar mitzvah MC. My community knows this. You may not know this, Myles. I was a bar mitzvah MC for 37 years. That was my first career before becoming a podcast producer. And I remember making that leap from being a full-time person in the mid 90s to and part-time DJ, and just trying to figure out at what point do I make the leap to full-time DJ? I'm getting more calls than I can handle right now. I can't handle it because I'm working my full-time job. I feel like I'm stealing time from my full-time job to work my part-time job. And I'm making, at this point in my career in the 90s, I was making the same as a DJ, working 4 hours a week as I was working, making 40 hours a week with my full-time job. At some point, we've all got to take that step. But I want you to maybe share one point prior to you making that step, that dreaded day where you had to run to the kitchen to do to do the depalletizing and repalletizing and dealing with the freezer and the freight elevator. Think about what did you know in your head that you're like, hey, I'm working this full-time job. I got this part-time job. That's my passion. When did you realize, but at some point before you were doing all the depallet and repalleting, you had to realize I'm working I'm doing too many things. I'm being stretched too thin. When did you realize that?
Yeah, there were multiple moments that kept occurring that were like reminders that I need to think about the transition at some point. I was under the mindset at first, and this is once again being naive, that there would be a smooth trend, like something would be so clear, like if you quit, you'll be a millionaire tomorrow. Like something where it was like quit today, and the next week you'll be all gravy.
Right.
That is so rare, and a lot of founders think it's coming, and I tell them it doesn't. You have to quit to get there. So for me, it was all these micro moments. Like one time, I had an investor meeting, and I was at work, and I was in construction, so I always had a hard hat on. And I remember running to my car and getting in my car with my construction vest still on, and getting on this Zoom with this investor, and taking that kind of meeting in the car is not professional, right? I mean, it was the best I could do.
Right.
And after the call, he said, "Hey, I'm going to decline." I pretty much said, like, this is not a professional. Like, we're not going to invest in you because we can tell you're distracted. It was like a whole thing.
Right. I get it.
And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I got to pay my bills. Right. And so, but things like that kept happening where opportunities would present themselves that I couldn't get to because I had a full-time gig. And a lot of it too was I was breaking apart at the seams. Like I was working from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., running back and forth. Like I was just like a mess. So a lot of it was the mental side. Like, hey, I need to just take that moment and try it. And if I try it and it doesn't work, I can rubber band back to engineering.
All right. So go back to that second attempt where you said, I'm leaving. You left your full-time job for the second time now to focus more on that. Did you know that you had things more in order on this second go around, and you just waited as long as you could? Or did you still feel like, shit, I hope this works? Like, what was your vibe going on?
There was a lot more momentum from a retail standpoint. Because when I did that transition, we were more of a brand as opposed to just a product.
Yeah.
Right? Like we were in distribution. I had a better understanding of how to grow. We had monthly orders coming in. Granted, in hindsight, I still didn't know shit. Right. But I thought I did. And so we actually grew like crazy fast after I quit.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I think that's an important thing too, is that sometimes the founder is holding his own company back because of his lack of understanding that yes, while I know it's going to be a risk to do this full time, it will have my full time effort if I'm in it, and things will be more professional. I'll take these calls from a conference room as opposed to my car with my construction vest and hard hat on. Talk about maybe that as a part of the entrepreneur journey as well.
It felt like I was more in control, right? Everything was done with more careful. It was a little more purposeful. The issue, though, and this might be very particularly in CPG, is that we grew too fast and didn't understand what happens when you grow too fast. It was a case where we went from 200 stores to 1,200 stores in 6 months. And there was so much capital and people needed to make that happen very well. And I was still a solo founder.
Right.
And we didn't have the ability to raise the capital needed to make that work. And so we got to 1,200 stores, and the walls, the cracks on the wall started forming pretty strong. And it showed me that because the foundation of the brand was built in a part-time manner, it showed. And I was like, okay, we went crazy on growth. But now we're like, you mentioned, building the plane while you're flying it. Now the plane is headed towards the ground,
right?
And I'm still trying to build it.
Oh, no, so now you got to get your landing gear all set up. You got so what was your step? Did you have to bring in new staff? Did you have to go to a different facility? Did you have to have a different distribution source? Like how does all that work
Oof.
in the consumer product side?
Yeah, so we got to a point where a couple things. The branding itself didn't make sense. I could internally tell it was not the brain was not speaking enough, right? I could feel that it was just another product on the shelf. From an operations standpoint, it was a very rough intro to big retail operations, and I didn't
Yeah.
know what I was doing. So a ton of mistakes were made there. We couldn't fundraise because I didn't know how to fundraise at the time. It's an art essentially, and our co-manufacturing partner was not equipped at this scale. So it was like all these things were not fit for that kind of growth. So I was like, well, I need to hit the reset button. So we actually ended up shutting down for 4 to 5 months, and we restructured our whole operations department, our co-packer relationship. I raised some capital now because I got better at it. And then we ended up relaunching with a more purposeful brand. And at this point, I'm like, I feel like a third time founder. I got all this knowledge now. So
Well,
it felt better during the launch.
and you've stayed really tight with your brand. It seems like if I remember correctly and looking at your website properly, you have simple products. I mean, you have three products, right? That's
Yeah.
what's on your website? You have buffalo style chicken mac and cheese, you have home style mac and cheese, and Philly steak and cheese mac and cheese. Those are the three front and center. And you've stayed true to your brand and not gone too far in width.
Yep.
How has that helped you, hurt you? Tell me about that.
It helps because if you and I've in the past have thought about spreading myself a little wider from a product standpoint, but each product that you introduce to the market adds another layer of complexity. And so when you see brands that have 10, 15, 20 products, it looks great from a consumer standpoint, but they've got a team behind it managing that. And because it was still small company, I'm like, if I try to bring in too many different products, I'm going to lose my mind. So we tried to keep the operations as simple as possible so that, I could spend time on sales and marketing and things like that.
Well, one of the things that I really love about your products, and I haven't had a chance to actually try them, but just in looking at the store locator, I'm looking on your website. You're in Gelson's Market and Bristol Farms, which are really two premier chains that are in the California area. So trying to extrapolate that, I'm assuming you're in some pretty healthy stores. I mean, if I remember correctly, are you in
Yeah,
Whole Foods also?
that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in some name brand stores. I mean, so how did you get there from where you are right now?
So we still took that same approach. So prior to the rebrand, we had built these relationships. So we had a Whole Foods relationship with the older brand. So that when we rebranded, it was more of like hey, I'm back. And because we had a great relationship, they were like, great, let's bring you back in. Because we liked you. At that point, they're like, we like you as a founder. We understand how tough this is. Because I was forthcoming about the need to scale back, they were like, great. If we got an opening, we'll bring you back in. And they did. And then with the California market, that was actually opened up with a pitch competition. I went out to Cali last year, rocked the stage, as they say, and the retailers were there and they were like, we like the brand. They brought me in. So, it's funny because if you try the traditional path of getting into these retailers, calling them or emailing them, it's a
Right.
very long
Right.
sales
Right.
cycle.
The Shark
But
Tank
things like
approach is much easier. It might seem
much
difficult, but it's
easier.
probably much easier if you're spotlighted as the one.
Exactly. So that's how we got in there.
That is very cool. For those in our community that have not had a chance ever to see or to try Miles's food, Miles Comfort Foods, comfortfoods.com. I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes for that as well. What's the future hold for you? What is your goal and what's your dream as an entrepreneur with this brand, Miles?
The biggest dream that we have is that we don't want to just be in retail. We want retail to be one arm of the business. The biggest thing is changing our food landscape in other places we eat. So if you think about our school systems, where we travel, so, airline food, hotel food, and then even for our kids in school, like, changing this mindset of convenience has to be nasty and non-nutritious. Like we should be able to have the convenience, but also have the comfort.
It's probably been on your radar at some point, whether you've decided to move forward with it or it's just an idea that's not, not feasible. Have you ever thought about like the direct to consumer? Like there are so many companies like, Pete's Real Food and all of the different ship to your home comfort foods that I would think that would be a natural fit for you. But again, I don't know anything about the expense of all of that as well.
That was always the challenge, was the operations behind it, because it's frozen, so it makes it very expensive. But we've definitely considered it. We pulled back when there was this when during COVID everyone was doing it, but then
Right.
in 2022 so many companies dropped out because it was crowded. But now we're re-looking at it like, okay, is there a place in that market where we can come in and be a big part?
The other interesting service, I'm sure that you've again thought about this at all. Just love to hear your feedback with all the different services, Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of those, to have centralized kitchens where you could actually, in some high volume areas, have direct to consumer already cooked and served hot to your door. Have you thought about that?
We were one of the million companies that tried that during COVID. We did.
Okay, I got it.
We did it for one weekend, and we got 2 orders. And I remember being like, "This is a lot harder than I expected." And this is when I was still doing it part time, and so
Right.
we just didn't do it after that. It was the concept was great. We just weren't prepared
Right.
operationally to do it long term.
Well, there's a lot, stay in your lane. That's the best thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you have you understand how the distribution, wholesale, and moving to retail works. All of these other things, while it seems like, well, they're involving my product, it's a whole different distribution cycle and a whole different prep and all of that.
Yep.
Any final words, those that are entrepreneurs in our audience? Any words of wisdom that you can impart upon them as somebody that's seen his ups and downs and ups again in the world?
Yeah, the biggest thing, there's 2 things I want to leave with is, number one is know why you're doing this. I think a lot of folks have great ideas, but when they're faced with big challenges, if you don't have a foundation of the why, you'll quit, right? But if you truly have a passion for it, you'll withstand that. The second thing is, team is important. And I'm not talking about having a staff of 20 people. It could be 1 person. It could be 2 people. Just having someone in your camp that is with you doing this, because in this industry, like many others, it is so complicated, and it requires having folks by your side.
I love it. 2 really great things: having the passion to do it, that even if you didn't get paid, would you still do it? Entrepreneurs that are out there in our Nice Guy community, if that is you, then you're true to your entrepreneurial dream. I can remember for a couple of years, Strick and I, my partner in our production business, podcast production, we were paying our team before we were even getting a paycheck. We're like, why are we doing this? But we love doing it. So we knew that there was money down the road. It was just not happening in the early stages. The other thing that Myles mentioned is the importance of not going it alone, the team approach to making this happen. And it's not just having someone so that you can say that you have an assistant or somebody on your team. And it doesn't even have to be a big team. It could be a little team, but the importance of relying upon your team. Delegation is huge. And without delegation, you're doing it all on your own. And Myles can attest to the fact that, hey, working 20 hours a day between the full-time job and the part-time job, let somebody else do it. Delegate it, delete it, get it off your plate. Make sure that you are sticking with what you are, are your gifts, and just continue to try to live your dream doing that. But don't do everything. Maybe in the beginning, you have to do everything to learn it.
Sure.
But you can certainly delegate as you go through it. 2 really valuable lessons, Myles. Thank you for being on the show, and thanks for sharing your wisdom, your inspiration, and totally your motivation for getting this done.
For sure. It was a pleasure being here, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Hey, for all of those in our community, don't forget to check the show notes for all the important links. You can check a store locator where you can get Myles's Comfort Foods very close to you. Check out his story. Also, definitely check out the founder story and the products. And if you need to reach out to Myles to chat with him, he's an easy guy to talk to. Feel free to reach out on the contact page. I'm sure he's got some time to maybe even coach you through some of those entrepreneurial journeys that you're experiencing right now. I know he's passionate about that too. Steve O'Brien, thanks for checking us out. Thanks for being here. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Fill up your week with the nice guys. Well, there's always money in the banana stand.